what primary medical plan do you know that's going to cover like $20,000 for the IUI and everything else that is involved in infertility, all of the hormone injections and the egg retrieval and this and that? We will.
Hey, what's up, guys? Spencer Smith here, host of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast, sponsored by Pareto Health, ClaimDoc, and PlanSite. Enjoy today's episode.
That is one thing I don't think that I could ever do is stand-up comedy. I am not a funny person.
You think that, but if you learn who you are and you learn how to write for yourself,
maybe
you can find what's funny about you.
Interesting.
But the reason I brought that up is because your 5-minute set, if you were to structure it kind of like a comedy set, the goal would be in the first 10 or 15 seconds. Like if you could get a laugh,
that's kind of what I did.
Them.
Yeah. So I structured it as like, so the topic was fair is not equal, equal is not fair. So like a fair versus equal conversation. Remember, this is a whole group of HR people.
Well, and that's a kind of a rot topic with that's a heavy topic.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be like
compelling a little bit,
a little compelling, a little provocative, if you will.
Yeah.
So I was tasked with coming up with something that was provocative, and I was like, they might like hang me at the end of this. I'm not sure, but I'm just going to go for it. So it was fair versus equal, and I started with the idea of my children, like fair versus equal with my kids. Something that I could sort of relate to and kind of try to get a laugh out of, like, my little monsters that don't understand the difference between fair and equal right now. Everything's not fair, that's not fair, that's not fair. I'm like, well, it's not equal, but it is fair.
It's fair, yeah.
Like the tiny one wants to be able to ride roller coasters, and I'm like, dude, like there's a height requirement. Like, I'm sorry that it's not fair. We literally just
had this happen at SeaWorld. My poor guy was an inch too short. We got up to the roller coaster. I get on. My wife is bringing him on. And they're like, can we check his height real quick?
Oh,
like,
no.
God.
And
as soon as they said no, meltdown, crying. But I'm already locked in with my daughter, and we're going to go. And, that literally just happened a day ago.
Story of my life when I was a kid.
Were you the short?
I was so short when I was a kid, and it was just, I could not ride anything, and I wanted to ride everything.
Yeah, that poor guy, he thought he was about to have the ride of his life and had to watch his sister go around. But I get it. It's not fair. But
it's not equal.
It's not equal. Well, no,
but it is fair.
It is fair because it's a safety issue, right?
Yeah,
like you could fall out. So but you can't explain that to a 2-year-old.
You can't. And so I sort of took that idea and shaped it into like how HR directors look at benefits as a whole amongst the organization. We are programmed in this day and age that everything has to be equal. But just like my kids, like there's a place and a time for equality. Like I gotta make you the same peanut butter and jelly. We gotta have the same stupid red cars, both of you. One can't be red, one can't be yellow. Like equal, fine. And then there's a place for fair. Like I've got to do certain things for Jack, not Owen, because of your needs and because of who you are as a person. Like I have to cater to your individual needs. Like why don't we look at that across the entire employee platform and say, hey, we've got a group of people, for example, the nurses, like they're burned out, they're stressed. Why not give them like more mental health support? What if we've got, a group of executives that travel all the time? They're not taking care of themselves. And, one of them dies of a heart attack. Clearly, there is a need to provide a different type of benefit for executives because of that. So, there's a time for equality. We got to have the same handbook for everybody. We got to do the same, primary medical plan. But there are opportunities that you can show your employees that I look at you, I see you, I'm going to provide you a specific benefit because of your needs. So that was my speech.
Well, there's a perfect example of why I leave some space for us to have a conversation before the podcast, because I'm probably going to keep that if we're rolling. Nathan, are we good to go? Okay.
All right, cool.
So that was great. That was a great way to tee up this conversation. But I'm here with Rachel Rutherford with ArmadaCare. You're the sales director, and you guys do executive medical. Did I get all of that right?
Yes, you did.
Good. Okay, that's the only scripted part of the conversation, and so now we get to have fun after that. And you're going to help me unpack what the heck executive medical is.
But I'm going to try.
You just sort of set the tone maybe for the conversation based on what we were just talking about, which I think is great, because I do think it is useful to parse this notion of equal and fair, and there could be a difference between those two things. So before we go down that path, Rachel, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, your career, all that fun stuff.
All right. So Rachel Rutherford, yes, I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, born and raised, master's girl through and through. Went to college at USC, University of South Carolina, and then moved. I now live in Maryland, so I've been there for about 13 years. Got my bachelor's in accounting, got a master's in accounting, I became a certified public accountant right out of school, spent about 6 years or so as a CPA working at public accounting firms, hated every single minute of it. So one day I just up and quit, and I had no plans, literally no plans. I just could not do it anymore.
So you just quit?
I just quit. I'll never forget. So I'm sitting at a conference table. I was in auditing at the time. So I'm at a client, and one of my senior managers who I had a really good relationship with was sitting kind of across the table from me, and, sitting behind the computer, doing the Excel stuff. And I just must have had this look on my face, I hate this so much. I would literally rather take nails to my hands than sit here and do that. So she's like, Rachel, let's go to lunch. So she takes me to lunch. She's like, you hate this. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I hate it. She's like, then just quit. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? She's like, I don't know. You're 25 years old. Yeah. Figure it out. Yeah. Who cares what you're going to do? So I was like, okay. So within a week, I said I quit. At the time, I was teaching fitness classes. So I was doing bar classes, Pilates classes, and I talked to the owner of the studio because they also did private training. I was like, do you have an appetite for me being able to do some personal training for you guys? And she was like, yes, please. Come on, let's do it. So that's what I did. I quit. I did personal training. I taught fitness classes for about a year until somebody said, I feel like you'd be really good at sales. And I was like, no, that's not me. I don't do sales. And they're like, no, I think you'd be really good at it. So I somehow landed in the office of ArmadaCare, and they were sort of expanding at the time because they had just gone through this transition, which I sort of told you about, where the Affordable Care Act had happened. A lot of our competitors had been wiped out. And they were like, all right, we're going to grow our sales team. Are you interested? It's kind of going to be an entrepreneurial role. We don't really have a playbook for this, but we're just going to go for it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And the rest is history. And here I am.
Wow. So that's it. Really interesting progression. And I didn't know the full story there.
Yeah.
I got to go backwards in time though and ask, you studied accounting, right? Yep. You got a master's in accounting. You spent 6 years in accounting, but it sounded like you hated every minute of it.
I did.
So how did you end up in it in the first place?
It was easy.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I told you, and I don't know if we want to get into this detail, but so when you go to USC, you're just sort of, if you are an undeclared major, they throw you into the business school and make you do intro to accounting, intro to finance, econ 101, blah, blah, blah. So accounting was just one of those easy classes. And I was like, okay, well, it's easy. And I have a career trajectory. I know exactly what I'm going to be doing if I leave or once I graduate. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's do this. Typical, 18, 19-year-old that was like,
I get
great.
It. Yeah, no, that's the idea of declaring what you're going to do for the rest of your life at 18 is pretty
how do
silly,
you even really know what you're going to... I didn't know what I was going to do when I was 18. What?
I'm 40, and I'm just figuring out what I am going to do.
I'm still not sure that this is where I belong, but it feels right now. So we're just going to go
and you're
with
obviously very good at it, and I want to talk about that. But I'm with you there, too, is have you heard the term zone of genius? Do you know this?
No, please educate me.
Andy Neary introduced me to this.
Love Andy.
Yeah, I love Andy too. I don't think it's his term. I think it was from a book or something. But zone of genius is effectively what you're good at, but also what you love to do simultaneously. And so it sounds like accounting was something you had a natural propensity towards and were good at it, but you didn't love doing it. And so you have to actually have that own self-reflection at some point to go, I could continue to do this and maybe I can slog through this 8 hours a day and make a very nice career, but will I be miserable the entire time? Yep. You at least had the epiphany at 25, this sucks so much that I need to get out, even if it means quit and have no idea what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
But it's because you weren't in your zone of genius, and maybe sales ultimately is. But the stop in between with the fitness instructor, it actually makes sense. In hindsight, now that I look into that transition to ArmadaCare, it makes sense for that background to fit into
well,
what you do
and you know
today.
what? I think I've reflected upon this a lot, and I think both of those things, the fitness stuff and the accounting, kind of had to happen in order for me to be really good at what I'm doing now. Because like with accounting, so much of what I do is talking to the C-suite. I talk to CFOs all the time, and being able to sort of speak that language, because that's what I was doing in accounting. We were auditing their books. I was having to talk to the accountants every day about taxes, and much of our benefit is a tax benefit. So just having that comfortability with speaking to them in that way was really advantageous. Having the ability to sort of think critically as an auditor and constantly be asking, like, where do I go from here? Like, what else do I need to be looking for? And having that critical thinking skill was really beneficial. So like those skills sort of naturally translated to what I'm doing now. And then with the fitness stuff, honestly, that was just sort of me getting out of my comfort zone. It was like, okay, here's 60 minutes. You're in charge of a room for 60 minutes, and you're going to choreograph to music, and you're going to be nobody's going to talk. You are going to be talking for 60 minutes to somebody with no interaction. Like when I first did it, that was terrifying. But then after you do it a while, you're just like, you realize that you're walking into a room half the time. You don't know what you're going to be doing, but like, hey, I'm here and I'm going to talk. That's pretty much what I'm doing with you right now.
That is sales, but that's just more immediate like response. If that person is doing what you are demonstrating and doing it effectively, and you're motivating them within that hour to do that, you sold them on the notion that there's going to be some benefit for them to perform the exercise with you, right? And so you were being prepared, whether you knew it or not, to get into sales. So I'm curious, I imagine the transition, was it that difficult for you, or did
Honestly,
you pick it up right away?
Like I remember when I started on Halloween in 2016 at ArmadaCare, and I remember I spent like maybe a week with my boss at the time, just sort of understanding what the product was, and he's like, all right, like, let me know when you want to start making calls. Do you want to listen to some more calls? And I was like, no, let's do it. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, like, give me the phone. Let's go. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Somebody's going to tell me no. I've been told no a lot. Like, I'll survive.
So did you, right away, were you calling on employers, or were you calling on consultants?
Consultants, yeah. So our distribution model, it's probably like 80 to 90% through employee benefit consultants. We do direct to group, but it's not as
did you
frequent.
have any idea what the persona of a benefits consultant or broker was?
No, I had no idea. I've since learned, but like at the time, I didn't know what I was talking. And it was scary because at the time I felt like I needed them to want me and like want our product. I've sort of shifted my conversation now and realized nobody out there knows what executive medical is. Like, I'm the expert at it. So like, I feel like, you know, they need me more than I need that. Not to be like rude, I'm not, but
no, but I mean, there's this, like with Pareto,
there's a comfortability once you like realize that you know you are the expert, you know what you're talking about, and like if somebody needs you, they need you.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at too, is like I almost feel obligated, right? Now that I know what I know from the inside, my job is to evangelize for what we sell at Pareto, the solution that we have, because I have looked at it from every possible angle I can think of. I've heard from hundreds of people their different perspective on it. I've pressure tested it, if you will. It works. So now I'm like, my job is like, I need to go tell people about that. And so you feel like if you do an effective job of communicating, other people will come to the same conclusion that there's value there. But it's not a place of, I need to convince you. Like I want to convince you because of what I know about the solution. I think ArmadaCare fits into that bucket as well. So early days selling it, the learning curve of positioning the product. It sounded like because of your accounting background, at least you understood the compliance side, you understood the tax advantages. But as you're going out and pitching it for those first few calls or getting to that first sale, walk me through like kind of your personal experience there. Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for three main reasons. Number one, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number two, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number three, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments.
Oh boy. So, there's really two different ways that you can look at ArmadaCare and the different advantages that it provides. So one is going to be this tax advantage. And then one is really going to be using this as a compensation tool for key people.
Okay.
It's using this as a retention tool, maybe a recruiting tool. And early on in my career, just because it was easy for me, I really gravitated towards this tax advantage. And I found that I was sort of getting into this niche of selling sort of small businesses, because that's where that really highlights. Like a small employer that's doing this, for 3 or 4 owners, they're not going anywhere. They're not using this as a retention tool. So most of my conversations took place around small business owners and tax benefits and leveraging that tax advantage. And that was easy. I was churning through these small groups and it was great. And as I've kind of gone through the years, I've really started to see and hear this retention tool and why it's so important and how much money it can save companies. When your most important talent walks out the door, you lose hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to replace them, and lost productivity and knowledge. And, I've sort of morphed my conversation, and now I can have these big conversations with big companies about really important topics, and I can still have the conversations with the small groups. So I think it's just been an evolution of...
Well, yeah, I mean, your level of understanding of the product and how to position it, it's a more sophisticated conversation. To do the latter than it is to focus purely on tax advantages.
Yeah.
Both of those are equally important, I would say, from a business owner's perspective as to why they might choose to use it.
Absolutely.
But before we proceed further, because I don't want to dance around it, I want to give you a second to actually talk about what ArmadaCare is. Let's position it now so that I can start asking the more technical questions.
Okay. So what ArmadaCare is it's going to be a mouthful. Okay. So stick with me. A supplemental medical reimbursement plan that can be carved out by class as defined by the employer.
Okay.
So our benefit is typically it's 100% employer paid. So an employer gets to come in and say, I've got a select group of people. So we go down to a minimum of 3 employees. So it can be 3 employees, your C-suite. It can be 10 people that are your, VPs. It could be 500 nurses that you want to hold on to. However the employer wants to define that class is up to them.
Okay.
Title, tenure, percentage of compensation, whatever it is. So the employer defines that class, and our plan is a supplement. So we're not replacing anybody's primary plan. Right. It's strictly a supplement that sits on top. The employer funds it as a fully insured plan. So the employer pays a premium. It is a deductible business expense for the employer. And basically what they're buying is the ability for these employees to submit to us any and all out-of-pocket expenses. Deductibles, copays, LASIK eye surgery. If you've got a letter of medical necessity, massage therapy, personal training, nutritionist, executive physicals, you name it. Any HSA or 213D eligible expense can be submitted to ArmadaCare through a mobile app, and we're going to reimburse directly to the employee. So they have no out-of-pocket costs whatsoever.
Okay. So there's a lot there. I have a lot of questions I want to follow up on. But so let's start with the baseline though. So you said it is a supplemental product.
Yes.
So what type of medical plan needs to be underneath for there to be compliant? If you
anything. Okay. So it can be fully insured, it can be self-funded, level funded, reference-based pricing. The only thing that we can't do, it can't be like a MEC plan, like a minimum, whatever, essential cover. Yeah. So it's got to be like a major medical plan.
Okay. And the one thing that you're very clear on is that your product is fully insured.
Yes, that's
which
critical.
You said differentiated you from your competitors at the time of the Affordable Care Act. So what was the issue for those other products and why you guys were able to survive the transition to ACA?
It's very nuanced. So without getting into a full sort of compliance conversation, really what the Affordable Care Act did was put a whole bunch of eyes on the industry. Those products were really questionable even at the time. So you'll see that was why ArmadaCare was even at the time sort of a niche product, is that there were employers out there that were kind of concerned with this whole sort of self-funded model. Because if you look at the tax code, it's a 105H issue. It very clearly says that if you are self-funded, those benefits better be taxable to the people that you're carving out, right? So, but if you're fully insured, that's not the case.
Okay.
So it's not, the ACA, yes, it has some ramifications with the compliance, but more importantly, it just put a whole bunch of eyes on the industry and made major carriers like Lincoln Financial pull an ExecuCare product that was hugely popular at the time because it was questionable in the first place.
Okay.
So what we're able to do is remove all doubt. We're fully insured, we are compliant with 105H, and we are considered an accepted benefit when it comes to the Affordable Care Act. So we are, meaning accepted, we are not subject to the non-discrimination rules that the Affordable Care Act provides because we are not a primary health plan. We are supplemental.
Okay, okay. So any type of plan underneath, as long as it's a full medical plan and not a mech plan, okay? This bolts on top, but you carve it out by class. The class, though, can be defined by the employer.
That's right.
Are there any limitations to the classing out of employees, though?
No, not really. So I always tell employers, you can pick and choose if you want. Like, I don't advise doing that. I think there should be a predefined class, because what you don't want to do is say like, oh, Joe, Rachel, Spencer, John, they get this, but somebody that has the exact same title, been there the exact same amount of time, makes the exact same amount of money, and is in a protected class doesn't get it. Like, you don't want that. Then you're discriminating in a totally different way.
Okay.
So there should be some prescribed notion to it. Now, I've had employers that, it's very granular how they define their class. It's based on not only title, but also tenure. So like senior partners at a law firm that have been partners for at least 10 years. There's your class.
Yeah. Well, I even like the way that you just described setting it up that way is almost like an incentive over time to earn your way into that benefit, right?
Yeah.
Going back to the early conversation about fairness versus equal, there is a fairness in that if they know, hey, I can earn my way into it, this benefit already exists, as long as I reach this tenure or whatever the requirements are, I now get it as a new added benefit.
Yeah.
Some other people have already earned their way there, and I see that's fair because I get a chance to earn over the course of time. I really like the structure.
And here's another cool idea. We have different levels of our plan. So you could almost make it like a 401k vesting schedule where you're eligible for it once you hit 5 years, but then once you hit 7 years, you get a little bit more out of ArmadaCare. You get our Diamond plan instead of Platinum. Once you hit 10 years, you get Diamond Plus. So it incentivizes that longevity with the employer.
I like it. Well, then let's go into the utility of it because you describe two different buyer personas, right? The small business that's really focused on the tax incentive. So let's start there.
Okay.
Then we'll go into that larger, more sophisticated conversation. What are the tax advantages? Tell me if I was going to choose it for that reason, what am I getting as a benefit to my company? PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. Well, what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part? PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals.
All right, well, let's look at what your alternatives are,
okay.
Right? So that's going to be an easy way to sort of position this. So one could be, I'm just going to give you more money, right? Like somebody comes, they say, I need this for infertility. I have a child with autism. Like, employer, give me a break. Like, I need something. And you could say, all right, I'm going to give you another $10,000 in salary. Right? And that's going to go towards you paying for all of these benefits. Well, the problem with that is the employer has to pay payroll taxes on that. So that $10,000 is going to cost him, 11, 12 grand, something like that. And then the employee only gets to take home 60% of it, right? So they have $10,000 in expenses. You give them $10,000 and they only get to take home $6,000.
Yep.
What? So that's your alternative versus our plan, which is an insurance product. So the advantage on both sides is for the employer, you get to say, hey, I'm going to give you this. It's an insurance premium. So it's still going to be deductible, just like your salary is going to be, right? But you're not paying payroll taxes on it. So that's not an issue. And for the employee, oh my God, what an incredible benefit, because you're leveraging the employer, you're leveraging that $10,000 is what I'm paying, but that can buy you up to $100,000 worth of coverage with ArmadaCare. So you're not only saving in taxes because the employee isn't having to report this as income, because every reimbursement is not taxable to the employees, but you're leveraging the insurance value as well.
So if you had to sort of partition like the percentage of buyers that choose that versus the quality of the benefits themselves or the retention tool, how often is somebody buying purely on tax reasons alone?
You know, I don't like to sell it that way, because if I'm doing it that way, all I'm selling you is a break-even analysis. It's strictly a financial equation, which I can certainly do, but you know, each year is going to be different, right? Like some years you're going to break even. Next year, ArmadaCare is going to win by a little bit. The year after that, you're going to take us for a ride. Like that's the nature of insurance, right? So I want to always position it, even with the small employers, that there's a big benefit to it that you're also not necessarily seeing besides the break-even analysis. There's the concierge sort of level of service that we have mastered. You know, we've been in business for, 18, 19 years now, and it's all been focused on the C-suite, focused on very white glove service for these people. So, you know, we're also selling you sort of a concierge lifestyle when it comes to your medical benefit. Back to your original question, it was like, what percentage does this versus that? I don't know. I would say like the small business, those are easy, right? Like I can churn through those because you can start at the beginning of any month. It doesn't necessarily have to coincide with your primary medical plan. And there's a lot less red tape. So the frequency of those is probably a lot more. But then when you're looking at the bigger organizations that want to do this as a more of like a total rewards and compensation package, those might not necessarily be as frequent, but you know, we're doing them in a bigger scale than we are with the small business owners.
Well, then let's talk about now the benefits, right? Let's focus on the second type of buyer that's a little more sophisticated. What are the things that I'm seeking as an employee or to give or to provide as enhanced benefits so that I'm keeping my best people or bringing in the top talent? Like, what am I getting out of ArmadaCare?
Well, here's what I hear all the time. You know, people don't know what they want. They want what they know, right? Steve Jobs, I think, maybe coined that. Who knows? But nobody knows executive medical is a thing anymore. They all thought it went away with the Affordable Care Act. So an employer is going to come to their benefit consultant and say, like, I don't know, what can I do? Like, I want to look at executive benefits. And everybody's going to go, okay, long-term disability, like, you know, individual like life stuff, deferred comp, like some more perquisites, I guess, but nobody even thinks about executive medical. So my goal is just to educate as many people as I can that this is even still a thing. So like, if you don't know to ask for it, how are you ever going to get it? So I think as an employer, what you're really looking for is you might be coming to your consultant saying, I have retention issues. I have recruitment issues. I need my benefit package to be richer so that I can get better people. And somebody's going to go, okay, well, we can like, you know, increase your benefit package from like a standard sort of gold benefit to a platinum benefit. But like, then you got to offer that to everybody. And that starts to get really expensive. So, you know, I think it's more about learning the question behind the question. When employers are asking for richer plans, when they're asking about retention strategies, I just want everybody to know that this is there for them, because most people aren't going to ask for this specifically.
Well, and how does it sort of coexist with the medical plan underneath it, right? So like, let's say I'm an executive and I've decided to add ArmadaCare for the C-suite of my company. Okay. How is that working for me? What are some of the things that I would be getting out of it? And then how does that interoperate with my actual underlying medical plan as well?
So number one, there's no coordination of benefits between us and the primary medical plan. That's a compliance issue. So you're not going to see that. So what's going to happen is the employee, once let's say you go to the doctor, you get your EOB, it says you owe $80 for a PT visit. Okay. You're going to take a picture on your mobile app of that EOB, or you can submit it online, whatever you want. And as soon as you submit it to us, you're going to get an email that says, we got your claim, we're processing it. 3 to 5 business days later, you're going to see $80 come into your checking account. Okay. So within about a week, you're just going to get reimbursed. And I use air quotes because it really sort of depends on the timing, whether it's just, an initial payment or a reimbursement, right?
And so it functions like an HRA in that regard.
It does, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but how does it then differ from an HRA?
Well, an HRA, you got to give to everybody, right? If you're going to do it for one person, you got to do it for everybody. So it's not the worst comparison to say that this is sort of a self-funded HRA that you're doing for a core group of people. Mm-hmm. And the other problem with an HRA is again, to make it affordable, because you got to do it for everybody, you're not going to see those be super duper rich. Like, you're not going to offer an HRA to 500 people for $10,000, $20,000. Like, that's just not going to happen. But you can if you're doing it for 10 people and not 500.
Makes sense. Yeah. So then that leads me down the path of asking underwriting questions, right? This is a fully insured product.
Fully insured.
There's premium, right? You said that it could go up to $100,000 of benefit, or is that the cap, or does it go up higher than that?
That is for our richest plan, the annual family maximum is $100,000.
That's the diamond, or is that the platinum?
Diamond plus.
Diamond plus. Okay, so the diamond plus.
Okay, so here's what I always tell everybody. All right, so we've got platinum, diamond are like our two most popular plans, and everybody like, well, which one is it? The stone is more valuable than the setting.
Stone is more valuable than the setting. Okay.
The diamond is the stone. The setting is platinum. So, get it?
Yeah, I do now, but you kind of went over my head a little bit.
All the women out there that have an engagement ring on know what I'm talking about.
She definitely would have got it. So the stone is more valuable than the setting.
So diamond is richer than platinum.
Diamond is rich. Makes sense. Okay.
There you go.
But underwriting this, you said it could be pretty unpredictable. One day I could take ArmadaCare for a ride one year, and next year you guys make a ton of money.
It's pool rated.
It's pool rated.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's pool rated. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, but then based on just the value of the product itself, right? The quality of that product that they choose, it just has a set price per employee, or how
so the underwriting factors are going to be, we look at census information for the people that we're going to put on the plan. So it's important to know, age, gender, zip code. How are we covering just employees, or is there a bigger spread of risk with like spouses, dependents, et cetera? So we look at census, but then we're also going to look at that primary plan design that we're quoting, right? Because if you've got a really rich PPO copay plan, our exposure is not as high as if you had a really high deductible, like qualified high deductible health plan. Okay. So you're going to see rates for that high deductible plan be higher than the PPO because we have more exposure there.
Okay.
So that's how we're underwriting the risk.
But there's not really, are there like a benefit that ArmadaCare would cover that a medical plan kind of would not?
Oh, all the time.
Okay, yeah. So give me an example of some of those.
So like, we follow 213D. So that's the section of the tax code that governs like HSAs, medical deductions, et cetera. So we're not out there sort of like picking and choosing what we're going to pay for. We follow the same rules as everybody else by choice. So there's that. So like, let's use the example of infertility, because I get this question a lot, right? Like, what primary medical plan do you know that's going to cover like $20,000 for the IUI and everything else that is involved in infertility, all of the hormone injections and the egg retrieval and this and that? We will. So there's that. There's like mental health. Good God. I mean, the benefits in mental health are so poor in most medical plans, unfortunately. Good mental health providers most of the time are out of network. You're going to spend $150, $200 a session, and you're going to get nothing for benefits from your primary medical plan. That's something that we're going to cover in its entirety. Okay. And even setting aside like quote unquote medical, I always like to emphasize, because I don't want people to think, oh, this is just for sick people. this should be for healthy people. I have ultimate health. I am 36 years old and generally, knock on wood, healthy. And I use it all the freaking time. So like there's a wellness aspect to it too. You know, we're able to provide executive physicals. We're able to do, have you heard of like the like full body scans that...
Is that the DEXA scan?
There's that. They're like, I think Pronuvo is like one that I've heard a lot of people like going to here in Dallas, where they do like a full scan, detects like 500 cancers or something like that. Now one could argue like, is that really necessary? I don't know, maybe not, but like that's something that we would cover. If you have a letter of medical necessity, again, for something like high blood pressure, we're able to do personal trainers. And like for myself, I had 2 C-sections, and I can tell you that after that second C-section, we needed to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? So like I went to my OB and said, I need you to do a letter of medical necessity for me because I want to go to Pilates.
Yeah.
And I want to fix everything. Yeah. And she said, okay. And so now I'm able to get my Pilates covered by ArmadaCare. So, you know, it has huge advantages, both medical and like preventative wellness type stuff.
Yeah, too. I mean, it sounds amazing, right? And it comes into that, like, there's a realm of this is a very enhanced benefit, right? Which is why it does need to be classed out just because of the expense side of the equation. But I absolutely see why you would want to offer something like this if it was in the budget for you to do so. Are there like some kind of really cool use cases or stories where you've seen where ArmadaCare delivered not necessarily just purely financial ROI, but like a quality of life ROI?
Oh my God.
I'm sure you have countless stories, but anything you can think of?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the easiest sale that I'm able to get is, and it happens all the time, is one executive leaves to go start his new company or like, you know, goes somewhere else. And I say that even though this is a really great retention tool, some people leave, right? Yeah. You leave and they're like, I'm not coming unless you give me ArmadaCare. So then the new company calls and says, all right, what's this ArmadaCare thing? And they're like, okay, well, I want this guy, so I'm going to have to pay for it. So there's that. I had one guy that told me, like, this was a guy down in North Carolina. He was moving to another company and he was like, I will never not have ArmadaCare. My wife got an executive physical, found out that she had early stage breast cancer. It literally saved her life. And I don't care how much it costs. We will have it till the day we die. Just hugely impact. I'm working with somebody right now that they came to me and they're like, our director of nursing, we're just churning through them. Like it's costing our bottom line millions. Like, and I need something that's going to, you know, stop the hemorrhaging. Yeah. And so just being able to provide that type of benefit that, like, even if you notice a small percentage decrease in that attrition rate, that's going to be a hugely impactful bottom line number to your company. Totally.
Well, are you seeing, like, now post-COVID how the conversation has changed about what the buyers are asking for, what they're focusing on? Have you, like, detected,
you know,
like, as you're hammering retention and recruitment, which makes a lot of sense, which I'm hearing broadly speaking is a challenge, not only within our industry, but just at large, in the economy at large, is attracting and keeping the best people. Are you having folks focus on that side of the equation more often, or has that always been really something you emphasize? I'm just curious if the dialogue has changed over the last couple of years.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
I don't know if it's necessarily changed. It's just become more frequent. Like, COVID was tough. I mean, you know, I'm out there selling a luxury product, and when COVID happened, obviously everybody's like holding on to the purse strings, like we're not looking to make any changes, forget about it. So the conversations at the time, like there's still companies that were thriving during COVID, like think of the mask manufacturers, right? So I was still having the conversations and it was the same conversations, but now I feel like the pendulum has sort of swung a little bit from being very employee centric and employees being able to just go out there and demand anything and everything that they wanted, to now the employers have a little bit more leverage and they're trying to hold on to the right people. It's not necessarily about giving everybody that's asking for anything, you know, I want to work remotely. I want an extra $20,000. I want this. I want that. Like, we don't need to do all of that.
It's a little bit of a seller, more of a seller's market than it was like probably about 2 years ago. Everyone was like, oh, I'm working from home and I want this salary. And, you know, it's like, okay, at that time you could get that. I wonder if there'll be a little bit of a reckoning when the, you know, the employees sort of over demanded
I think
terms and conditions, right? Like, I think there's going to be some attrition that just comes with like, actually, you know what? Second thought, as an employer, we don't want you anymore because we overpaid for you, or we gave you, we conceded too much. So I do think it's shifting back the other direction. You and I are having that conversation over coffee. I've heard grumbling with some employers that are like, we're going back to office. Everybody's coming back, right?
Everybody's coming back to
that's
office.
A national conversation right now.
Yeah, and the people that we're covering half the time are the ones that were in the office the entire time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's like, we're going to lose some people. I'm sorry. We're coming back to the office. If you got to leave, you got to leave. Goodbye. But hey, look, now we freed up some money and now we're going to spend it on ArmadaCare for the people that were here all the time anyway.
Well, and I think that leads into a good conversation before we sort of move up to big picture and finish the podcast. The delicacy of this conversation around a benefit that is perceived as like an exclusive benefit or an enhanced benefit for a certain class of people, right? You might have some folks that are like, well, why don't I get offered that? Or that's not fair, right? That early conversation we had.
Fair versus equal.
So how do you position that? Because I can see both sides of the equation, but obviously an employer who's wanting to do this, they're wanting to do it for specific reasons and probably very good reasons. So how do you sort of delicately dance that conversation when somebody asks?
I mean, if I had all the answers and I could fix the United States healthcare system and make everything like...
Well, you wouldn't have to come sit on the Self-Funded podcast.
That's right.
You'd be on
I'd
TV
own the world,
everywhere.
right. So like I can't fix everybody's problems. And I wish I could. That said, most of the time, employers are wanting to do this because of their business. Like, this is a business decision. And the people that we're offering this to, and I say this because I feel it in my heart because I live it. I am traveling all the time. Half the time I'm eating like crap. I am putting my own health at a disadvantage to further the initiatives of my company. And I think employers recognize that with the people that they want to cover because they know that these are the people that are devoted. These are the people that are driving my bottom line and I want to take care of them because the reality is I could lose 50 other people, but if I lost this one, it would cost me more than the other 50. I have got to take care of them. I've got to show them that I'm taking care of them and I've got to take care of their family because if I'm taking care of their health, their family's health, their overall physical, mental, and emotional well-being by offering a product that is, you use it at your discretion. If you're sick, use it for that. If you want to use it for infertility, use it for that. If you want to use it for mental health because this job is just so freaking difficult, use it for that too. So I'm giving you a product totally hands off. Use it the way you see fit. This is not something that's got to go through. It's not a self-funded product, right? So the employer doesn't see it. There's an anonymity to it. So you're essentially giving these people a benefit to show them how much you appreciate all that they're doing for your organization.
You just got me really jazzed about
ArmadaCare. Let's all go sell some ArmadaCare.
Well, before we finish up, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of zoom out and discuss big picture of healthcare and then closing thoughts from you, Rachel, before you get on your way doing the rest of your meetings. But we had this conversation sort of casually over coffee, but I'm curious about your perspective. Where is our healthcare system going? If you had a crystal ball, what do you suspect will happen? Whether it's political or apolitical, it's just more like we're at this weird precipice where we all know something has to change, but nobody's quite sure what's going to solve it. What's your perspective on it?
I really don't know. I don't know what a single payer system would really look like in reality. I personally believe that free healthcare isn't free. Like, we got to pay for it somewhere, right? So there's that issue. I don't know if like this sort of dual option where you've got the single payer system, but then you've got like a buy up like through employers. Like, I'm not really sure how that would work. God, I wish I had a better answer for you. I really don't know. I do agree with you. Something's got to give. Like, this is not sustainable.
I think we just got to pick our battle. I mean, I've planted my flag in the ground of I'm going to focus on solving it through this mechanism or this channel, right? The conversations on podcasts as well as a self-funded mechanism through employee benefits captives. Okay, awesome. That's not going to solve it broadly speaking, for 325 million people or whatever we're up to in the United States today. So we all have to sort of pick which battles we're going to fight. And I think if we all fight our battles collectively in the right way, we might be able to do something to stave off a single payer system. And I certainly hope so, because you look at the VA, I've had friends in the military that go through the VA, that system, it's certainly not perfect. And I think it creates more headaches than it provides in value. So like, I just don't really know either. I'm just trying to do as much as I can to advocate for this way, in hopes that we get enough people, especially the next generation that are coming out of school like you and I were 15, 20 years ago. Right. Visionaries, and they'll apply this knowledge to,
And it reminds me of the whole, have you ever heard the saying, like, everybody can't, what is it? Like, you can't do everything, but everybody can do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like something like that. So like, I think all we can do is everybody can do one small part to like help this system. I'm doing the best I can.
Same here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I wish I could give you more than that.
Well, no. So here's closing thoughts. The floor is yours on this. Whatever you want to say. I really appreciate you educating me on something that I didn't know a ton about before, and I do actually see a real way that this could be positioned properly, and there's some value there, absolutely. But what do you want to kind of leave the folks with before you part and head out to your meetings?
Yeah, just know that this is out there. It's not dead. Executive medical is still a thing. It's just got to be structured the right way. I think ArmadaCare has done a tremendous job of removing all compliance concerns around offering executive medical, and be open-minded to it, because it can save employers a ton of money. It can be a hugely advantageous, if we're talking to the broker audience, a hugely advantageous tool for prospecting, for retaining their own clients, right? Like, you're bringing something to the C-suite. If you're looking for a door opener to get to those decision makers, if you're sort of stuck at the HR level and you want that door opener, this is a great way to do it. So we talked the whole podcast about employers, but if we're speaking to employee benefit consultants, I would urge them to really use this as a tool to leverage their own business forward.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate that. Well, thank you again for traveling in from Baltimore. It's nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me. This has been so much fun.
And this is the first of its kind subject on the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast.
I love it.
Thank you for introducing